Hi everybody, Richard Fulmer here, and welcome to another one of my Richard's Rock Rambles episodes. So before we go any further, I just wanted to mention something. We're going to be doing, or I'm going to be doing one show per second week. So I'm not going to do it every week. Every second week is going to be a show, so that you don't have to look at this ugly face every week. Right, so on with today's episode. So I'm carrying on with looking at a couple of albums in the instrumental side of things. I know in the previous episode I did mention about talking about more of the sort of orchestral rock, but I had a look through my stuff here and I don't really have that much to offer. So we're going to go back to the tried and tested guitar. And just a couple of great albums, three of them in fact, that I think you should definitely look into. So the first one we're going to check out is, of course, a gentleman who recently passed away, sadly, quite unexpectedly, really. He wasn't really that ill. It all happened very quickly. Very sad day. Of course, I'm chatting about Mr. Jeff Beck. And this is one of his instrumental albums called There and Back. And this is probably a little bit more on the rock side of things. He did quite a few albums in the jazz rock fusion vein. This has got parts of that, although it's a bit more on the rock side. I'm trying to think what the other ones are. Blow by Blow, Wired, those are another two that you can get into. The live album with Jan Hammer is also brilliant. But this one I quite enjoy, and I managed to pick this up from a vinyl fair, not so long ago. Not many tracks. There's about 8 tracks, in fact. Some interesting gentlemen on here. Guitars, obviously Jeff Beck. Jan Hammer's here on keyboards. He did quite a few albums with him. Drums, also Jan Hammer on the first track called Star Cycle. Some really cool guitar work from Jeff. He was one of the... I don't think there was anybody like Jeff Beck. He was quite unique, especially in his style of playing. He never used guitar picks, or I think maybe in the beginning he used guitar picks, but later on it was just with his fingers. Quite amazing. So that's Star Cycle. Then you got Too Much to Lose with on drums, the great Simon Phillips. And of course, Simon Phillips has played with everybody and his auntie, including quite a long time with the band Toto. So that's the second track, You Never Know. And then my favorite track on the first side, The Pump. And that's also got Simon Phillips and then a guy on keyboards called Tony Hymas, who Jeff Beck would hook up with Terry Bozer, I think, and the three of them released an album called Jeff Beck's Guitar Workshop, but that would come a bit later on. This came out in 1980, by the way. Then we go to side 2, El Becco, The Golden Road, Space Boogie, another really cool track on here with some great drumming from Simon Phillips. He just adds a little bit extra to all the tracks here. And quite an up-tempo track that. And then the last track is sort of a mellower track, The Final Piece. And that's just guitars, Jeff Beck, and keyboards, Tony Hymas once again. Co-produced by Jeff Beck and Ken Scott, recorded in London, England, 1980s. There and Back by Jeff Beck. I mean, I don't think there's really a bad Jeff Beck album. Some that I, probably play a bit more than others. But this is a really cool, as far as the 80s albums go, this is probably one of my top. So that's Jeff Beck, There and Back. Just have a sip of coffee here. This really cold and wet winter's day here in Cape Town. But, it's July, so it's expected. Now, here's a gentleman who, I'm sure I have mentioned this album before. If I have, apologies. But it's such a great album that it's worth mentioning again. And it's also a gentleman who doesn't get enough love out there, and when you talk about great guitarists, this guy seems for whatever reason to get overlooked, and he was an absolute genius. Had a guitar style all of his own, a sound which was just sometimes kind of otherworldly, some of the sounds he got out. Quite a really innovative player. There was nobody like him, as there wasn't with Jeff Beck. But who am I talking about here? Well, I'm talking about Allan Holdsworth and one of his greats. This is an EP. It's not a full-length album. And it's called a mini album here. Road Games was the album. Some stunning stuff on here. Strictly speaking, this isn't just instrumental. There is some vocals on here as well. And in fact, the vocals are done by none other than Jack Bruce. He appears here, Jack Bruce from Cream, obviously. And he appears here on vocals on one of the 2 tracks, I think. that have vocals. And there's also backing vocals by a guy called Joe Turano. Paul Corder and Paul Williams lead vocals on Road Games. I'm not sure if it's that Paul Williams, the one that was in that movie, quite a big artist in the 70s. It may well be him. And when did this album come out? See if I can see a date down here. This very small writing. 1983. So this is also the 80s. Produced by Circumstance, except produced by Allan Holdsworth. 3 Sheets to the Wind is the first track. Some incredible stuff on there. The time changes and the weird guitar sounds on here are just incredible. Like I said, it's, different. Then you get the title track, Road Games, and Water on the Brain Part 2. So who knows where Part 1 is, because it's not on this album. Maybe it was on another album. Then the second track, see, it's very short. There's only 6 tracks on here. Then on side 2, Tokyo Dream, Was There, and Material Real. Trust me, if you want something different and something that'll totally blow your mind, check this out. Allan Holdsworth's Road Games. Like I mentioned, his sounds are just incredible. I just want to see if there's anything else I can tell you. This is not, both of the albums I've just showed you are not gatefold. It's just, there's the back with the songs, and there's the front. Special thanks to Chauvel, my Chauvel guitars, Yamaha, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and here's a few mentions of thanks. Here's a name you might recognize, Edward Van Halen. And I remember reading somewhere or hearing somewhere about Eddie Van Halen and how he idolized Allan Holdsworth. So there you go. Blah, blah, blah. What else does it say? Frank Zappa. Yeah. There are sort of similarities between his work and Zappa's. And Jeff Berlin was on bass on this album, as well as Chad Wackerman. Now, Chad Wackerman also played for Frank Zappa, and of course Jeff Berlin is an incredible bassist. So that's on every track. It's Allan Holdsworth, Jeff Berlin, and Chad Wackerman. And then, as I mentioned, Jack Bruce on special vocal, guest vocals. There we go. Allan Holdsworth, Road Games. Check it out. And then finally, a band that's, I don't think they've had vocals. They may have had vocals as well. This band is very interesting. They sort of have a mixture of rock, sometimes a bit of country folk going on, hillbilly stuff, jazz rock fusion, unique band, unique sound. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they also use, there's a guy who plays the violin on here, or the fiddle. And I'm talking about the Dixie Dregs. And this is one of the albums called Night of the Living Dregs. Anything by these guys is amazing. So who's in this band? Well, here's a name you should know. Steve Morse on guitars. Of course, he was with the Dixie Dregs for many years. Played for over 20 years with Deep Purple. Just recently left them. And in fact, he's gone back on the road with the Dixie Dregs. They got back together and they're doing a bit of a tour. So he's part of the Dixie Dregs as well as the Steve Morse band. I think that what they're doing is sort of, he plays in the Steve Morse band in the first part of the evening, and in the second part of the evening the Dixie Dregs come out. So that must be incredible to see. There have been lineup changes with this band. Andy West on bass, brilliant bassist, excellent guy. And then a guy on the violin called Alan Sloan, Mark Parrish on keyboards, and then one of my favorite jazz rock drummers. If you haven't heard this guy before, you're missing out. Rod Morgenstein on percussion and drums and percussion. Brilliant stuff. What else can I tell you? So there's only 8 tracks. Starts off with a track called Punk Sandwich. Brilliant stuff. As I said, very different. It'll appeal to people who are into progressive rock. It'll appeal to people into jazz rock fusion. Plus, it's got that sort of country vibe to it as well. And I mean, I'm not a big hillbilly fan, but he just brings a little extra. And some of the finger picking from Steve Morse on these Dixie Dregs albums is amazing. The Country House Shuffle is next. The Riff Raff, Slong Low's Distance. So that's side 1. Then you get side 2, Night of the Living Dregs, the title track, The Bash, Leprechaun Promenade, which is also excellent. And then finishing off with a track called Patchwork. And all songs produced by Steve Morse. All songs by Steve Moore, sorry, he didn't produce it, except the bass written by Rod Morgenstein. Trying to see who produced this album. Mastered by blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't really say, but I presume it's most of the guys in the band. And 1979, so the previous two were the 80s. This was the end of the 70s. Excellent album. I've got a few other Dixie Dregs albums here, but anything by them is worth checking out. Musicianship is top draw, and this is on the Capricorn Records label. Sorry, there's the back cover. Not much to see there. It's also not a gatefold. That rather strange cover there. Yeah, Capricorn Records, and I think Capricorn Records is also the label that the Allman Brothers were signed to many years ago, and they had some pretty big names on their label. So there we go, the Dixie Dregs, Night of the Living Dregs. Excellent. All three of these I picked up at Vinyl Fairs. I was very chuffed to get hold of that Allan Holdsworth. I had it on cassette for many years, sort of a copied cassette, and I was looking for that for a long time, so very chuffed to get hold of that. There we go. I think that's going to be our final look at instrumental albums for a while. We might come back to it at a later stage. But what I'm going to do next time around is we're going to look at artists that went solo, part of a famous band broke up, band finished, whatever. Then what do? So they had a solo career. So that we're going to have a look at some solo careers of certain artists. Take it easy, guys. Look after yourselves, and I'll catch you soon. And y'all just remember, it's not going to be every week now. It's every second week. Take it easy. Bye-bye.